it's been a while since our last update. We took a look at the F6 Newtonian that I had been building for deep sky astrophotography, and since then I have switched to an F4 tube. Originally I was going to put an F4 mirror in the F6 tube and chop it up or whatnot, but found a really good deal on an F4 tube with a moonlight focuser that was included basically for free. And I couldn't pass it up just for the focuser alone. The difference in focal length isn't too noticeable. The F6 tube I really didn't get to take advantage of fully a lot because of the bad seeing here in North Carolina. We're right under the jet stream, at least in my specific location, central northern North Carolina. Really didn't get to take much advantage of it, but the F4 tube is kind of a nice balance around 760 millimeter focal length reduced, and that paired with APS-C gives a nice focal length, field of view while not sacrificing too much resolution. So tonight it's actually clear. We are going to take the tube out again, the F4 Newtonian out again tonight on the EQ6R, peeking in the frame right here. So we have the F6 tube here. I brought it out here. It's decommissioned, of course, no imaging train. The Losmandy D plates have been taken off, but this Orion, which was a Dobsonian, of course, if you watched my previous video, it's an 8-inch F6, considerably more tube on this. Feels a lot better to carry out, you know, to the mount from inside. I can just whip it around a little easier. This guy is shorter, but man, the steel considerably thicker, and I think that's what's doing it, even though this has more length to it. This guy is surprisingly heavy in comparison to get out here on the mount. Excellent time for a thumbnail. The sun is setting, it's getting dark out here. We've got the tube set up. We're gonna get the rest of the power situated and set up, ready to image tonight. And then we're gonna take a look at some, do a deep dive into some data and some final images from this Newt. Now that we're back here at the computer, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the data between the F4 and F6 tubes and see what the pros and cons are, and see if this F4 tube is really worth it. Now that we're here in PixInsight, we have a few data sets from the F4 Newtonian and the F6 Newtonian. Now I want to talk about guiding on both of these tubes. The F6 and the F4 I was both using in OAG. That just enables you to guide at the native focal length instead of using a smaller guide scope that can't see as accurately and detect all the errors the mount may be encountering. The number one thing with the F6 tube is the lack of stars in some regions. The F4 tube with its wider FOV and brighter light collection did help with that. Some regions still a little sketchy, but the F6 did really struggle here, and that's something to consider. You may want to get the most sensitive guide cam you can. You want to maybe get an OAG with a bigger prism, but the F4 will be a little bit better in that aspect. Guiding performance on both of these tubes were about the same. The EQ6R handled both of these pretty well. They're about the same weight rigged out. The F6 is just lighter steel, thinner steel, so it's both of them are comparable in weight once fully rigged out. One thing to consider is the F6 is more, the tube itself has more area for wind to catch. So with the slightest breeze, it will affect guiding. Usually windy nights suffer from bad seeing anyway, so your guiding may be bad, but your data is going to be bad anyway, so usually it's not even worth imaging in nights like those. Talking about the performance of these two tubes, we have some data here, as I said. We're going to be looking at some broadband and narrowband from each tube. And I tried to get some nights with some of the best seeing I've had when using both of these tubes. so it's as fair as possible. We're going to also be looking at star shapes in the corners and issues I had with tilt and back focus. Starting with the f6.2 back here, I have some 03. This was from several months ago, and I was quite pleased with the amount of signal we were getting. This is when I was still dealing with tilt, and if we kind of go into this corner here, we can see that elongation happening. Compared to the f4 Newt issues that I had, this is fairly mild. This was perfectly usable. Other corners were pretty good, or at least enough for BlurX to handle well. This was, as far as I can tell, the sharpest data I've had to date. This measured in at around 2.04. If we actually go into scripts, image analysis, FWHM eccentricity, PixInsight will actually measure this for us. Now this gives a value of 3.036 pixels. That's our medium FWHM. If we go into our calculator, enter in our pixel scale, which for this f6 Newt and my IMX 571 was about 0.68. We're gonna multiply this by 3.036, and that gives about 2.06. In comparison, sharpest data I've experienced on the f4 Newt is some S2 that I've captured just a couple days ago, finished capturing a couple days ago. And if we go into the same script up here, image analysis, FWHM eccentricity, and we're just gonna click measure. My pixel scale with the f4 Newt is almost a dead 1, so we don't even have to do calculations here. It's going to be about 2.1, give or take 0.005. This is the second sharpest data I've captured with any of my Newts. Overall detail of this data is excellent. Really happy with the sharpness of this. The last few sets of data we're going to look at is some broadband. So starting with the f6 Newt, we have some luminance from the M63 project I started several months ago. And this is one of the less sharp data sets I've gotten, and was still tilt present. Star shapes towards the edges weren't so good on this one. BlurX did manage to take care of it a good amount. This is actually heavily cropped because flats did not correct some of the vignetting I was getting from my Sharpstar 0.95x chroma corrector. Luminance is going to be a very bright stack when you're in light pollution and in general compared to narrowband. Vignetting has a weird behavior with different types of data. Broadband usually corrects out when you're in a dark part of the sky. You're doing shorter exposures. This is f6, but there still was some vignetting because of the switch to a APS-C size sensor. RGB, it corrects out pretty well most of the time. I haven't had any issues on the f4 Newt, that's for sure. The f6 Newt, some of the luminance I've had like this did not correct out too well, so I did have to crop a good bit. So star shapes are a little bit better because of that. Once you go out 100 pixels out, they do get a little bit worse. Now, the last stack we're going to take a look at is from the f4 Newt, and this is broadband. This is something I just captured a couple nights ago. This is the Sculptor Galaxy NGC 253. This is a southern target, very low. I think it only gets about 18 degrees max, somewhere around there in my skies. Unfortunately, south is heavily light polluted in my skies. There's a large Bortle 8 light dome, which otherwise would be a Bortle 5 or 6. So this is a tough target to get. Thankfully, it's bright, and this is about, I want to say, 50 minutes of red. The core has some great detail, really loving it. This is not the sharpest data I've gotten. Seeing isn't so great that low, obviously. That's one thing it's going to suffer. But as we can see, this is the red channel. I did have some flat issues. Every time I shoot south, that heavy light pollution, target's really low, something goes wrong. Flats, for some reason, didn't work well. There's a kind of this band, I don't know if it's vignetting, that just didn't correct out. You kind of see it going along here. See if I can stretch it out. Yeah, it kind of goes along there. You can kind of see it. We have an issue with the dust mode. I think I know what caused this. This I'm still not certain. And because of these issues with this data set, I'm actually going to use this for an upcoming tutorial using synthetic flats to minimize the effects of bad flat calibration, or if you don't have flats at all, though sometimes it won't fully correct. There's lots of circumstances where it won't do quite right, but in this case it worked really well with the data in my testing. So I'm going to release a tutorial on this. I've seen a lot of videos that are kind of vague on some stuff and are maybe outdated, so we're gonna have a nice updated quick straightforward tutorial for that, and make sure you can get your data as corrected as possible, even without the most optimized calibration frames. So in conclusion, we've looked at these data sets, and you can kind of decide which, if you're looking for a Newtonian or you already have one, you're looking to switch maybe to a bigger Newtonian, but you want a faster focal ratio, or sharpest results. We're on the f6 Newtonian, but my extent of data sets does not range enough to really tell whether it's seeing differences or the mirror specifically. Obviously, if you're seeing is very good, probably in theory going to notice some sharper results from the f6 from that added focal length, but depending on your pixel scale, the f4 can do just as good with that extra light collection, which is excellent. This S2 data was very close to the f6 while collecting more light, so it's really up to you whether you want to really zoom in into galaxies or really get some wide field of view with APS-C sensors on the f4. This even opens up the use of a Nexus coma corrector from Starzona that will really open your field of view up and give you that f3 focal ratio, which does come with its own challenges. Very sensitive to tilts and back focus, whatnot, but that speed is fantastic. I presented the data here, and if you are looking for a new scope, Newtonian specifically, looking to upgrade to a bigger Newtonian, maybe this will kind of give you some insights, especially some of the mods I've done with mine, see where you guys want to go. That is about it for our pix and sight comparison. Let me know what kind of videos you guys want to see in the future, and if these types of videos are enjoyable. Until then, this is WBH Astro, and clear skies.